Welcome to Foundation. Today we are talking to Jesse Jacobs, founder and CEO of Samovar Tea Lounge. This is our first brick and mortar business that we're talking to. I'm excited. He's got 3 locations. He's awesome. Let's go talk to him. So what kind of tea are we having today?
This morning we're actually drinking a Nishi Sencha. This is a first flush sencha from Kagoshima province in Japan, and one of my favorites because it's incredibly balanced. It has a little bit of vegetal quality like spinach and also some savory like umami. So that's the green tea here.
Yeah, you say first flush. A lot of people don't know what that means. Explain that for a second.
Yeah, well, if you think about flowers blooming, when they first bloom the first time in the season after a long winter, that would be considered the first flush.
And why is that better?
You know, I wouldn't say it's better. It's more that it's unique. There's only one first. So you have the long, cold winter, plants are hibernating, sun comes out, it starts to get warm, and those first tender tea leaves bloom, and those are very delicate and special. So they're special, they're unique, and you often don't know what you're gonna get. It could be actually worse tasting, but there's only one.
Yeah.
So that's why they're special.
I always tend to like it because you've gone a few months without having fresh tea. You know what I mean? And then finally it hits, and it's the new fresh crop, which is pretty awesome.
It's like going to the farmer's market.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah.
So let's start at the beginning. You were in tech way back in the day. Was that where you started your professional life? Or?
I guess my professional life I did. I started in a garage on the East Coast in Boston, and graduated from college with no real skills, but a bunch of foreign languages under my belt. Studied abroad for a few years, and didn't really know what to do with myself, and I picked up an HTML book. And with my brother, we started a small web design shop in my parents' garage. Literally 1996, 97, building home pages for folks with raw HTML.
Wow, awesome.
So pretty wild back then. That was in the East Coast.
Yeah, so you were still living at home at that point?
I was still living at home, graduated college, didn't know what to do, reading HTML, and said, wow, I could build a brochure for someone and for myself. And like many people, you're kind of in this limbo state when you graduate college with no real skills.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll start reading. You know, I enjoy reading and just really learned it because it was interesting. It was learning something new, and it was a new language. I'm not technical by any means, not in that mindset, but looking at it like a language, I could get by.
In 95, 96, that was very early days in the web, so it must have been somewhat of a sales job as well to convince people that they even needed a web page, right?
It was just a brochure.
Just a brochure.
Basically, you need literally brochure.
Is any of this stuff still online?
No.
I would love to see some of
I
this
could probably
stuff.
dig it up. We used NetObjects Fusion as the old school. It was like raw HTML along with this was the WYSIWYG editor.
Wow, I haven't heard that in a long time.
And that was an old one. And it's we went to some of the shows back then, and it was all exciting times. But at the same time, it was opportunities brewing out here.
Right.
So I built that up with my brother to a certain level, and realized that there were more opportunities going on. And my roommate happened to be driving out, so we drove across country.
Awesome. That is an awesome shirt, by the way. I just noticed that for the first time.
It's kind of weird, huh?
Where did you find that?
I think...
Is that like a flying...
I got it at a cool store in Venice, in LA. They have
What type of animal is that? That's
so
like a little...
it's a groundhog
with
wings. And it's actually... here's what... I think someone told me it's a beagle. Beaver plus eagle. Beagle. Because I have another one that's a bear with antlers.
Yeah, it's in the bear with antlers one. That's cool.
So anyway, that's what I was told it was. But
that's amazing.
Pretty random. It's yeah.
So fast forward a little bit. You finished up that job as a webmaster / HTML guru, and you moved out to the West Coast then?
It was dotcom heyday, classic.
So this is
gold
2000-ish, 99?
1998.
98, okay.
So
this is like right when things were starting to take off.
Right. I mean, I literally landed here and applied for jobs at Organic Online, all the classic Silicon Valley kind of Bay Area Soma web design shops, and thought, well, I'll apply my skills, and ended up at a company, essentially a construction company for big corporate websites, and it was a great ride. It was fast and furious. We grew to a couple thousand people by the end of it. It was one of those internet consulting companies, Fortune 500, free ice cream and juice and foosball and the whole deal, and working insane hours. Went IPO. I didn't really have any significant equity enough to pay off some college bills, but I didn't, cash out by any means.
So you did go IPO, and how was that?
IPO.
What was that
like?
We
had sushi and champagne at 9 a.m. on a Friday.
No way.
Goldman Sachs was our, Kleiner Perkins was a VC. It was all classic. I mean, it was absolutely classic. You walk into the foyer, There was, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars in the receptionist area. It was, and that's the way everyone lived. Everyone dresses like Banana Republic professional.
Right.
And every startup is in stealth mode. You can't talk about it.
Still some of that exists today.
It still exists today, yeah, but it was a super frenzied, high energy coffee era. People driving around, and I think that's when I got my first cell phone, actually. It's cell phones weren't even ubiquitous back then.
Yeah, that's right.
It's pretty crazy, but it was a great ride. And the company went public, sushi party, champagne, 9 a.m. on a Friday. Stock hit $120, split. I mean, the whole thing. I sold all my stock because I had college debt, paid off my debt, 50 grand. So, and every single one of my friends was ruining me. You are a fool. I can't believe you sold your stock. We're the next Microsoft. Blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And 6 months later, it was like
paper
millionaires, like just evaporated.
Wow.
But actually, a little bit before that, we ended up switching careers, and I went to a different startup, sort of as it was still hitting its peak. And it was actually a wireless company. And the software was a wireless application for enterprises to get your data anywhere, anytime. And this was kind of capitalizing on the momentum of the first company, a whole different VC group, but it was at an increased frenzy, and it was more travel and faster development cycles. And I guess when you say fast forward to here, it was at that time that I began to just feel a fracturing in the lifestyle. And
Is this something we were just getting too stressed out, or was it?
It was just traveling nonstop. It was building stuff, and it's becoming outdated faster than we could build it. It was just an absolutely relentless nonstop cycle. And yeah, stress was part of it, mental, physical, no time for friends or family, and yet everyone's kind of hoping for this big payout. That's the holy grail.
Right.
And it just became very unrewarding. It was, it became a shallow existence. I wondered, what am I doing? This is not living my life for me. It's for some other, supposedly greater cause. But I'm not changing the world with my daily activities, right? I'm going in, I'm dealing with IBM consultants and the corporate bureaucracy and big companies and cubicle farms as far as I could see, and it just became progressively emptier.
What got you into tea?
What got me into tea? I guess during that time, I was living in a little back and forth between San Francisco and Seattle. Really, really bleak time in little side of the road hotel, motel. And at the time I was reading a lot during my free time, so off project, and reading both Gandhi and Seneca at the same time. And there was two interesting quotes that kind of dawned on me and rattled the bell in my head. And that one was by Gandhi, and basically just says that life doesn't get better by going faster. And the other one by Seneca that pointed to the fact that it's not that we don't have enough time in our life, because it started to feel like everything's getting compressed. I don't have time to brush my teeth, let alone call my mom. It's not that we don't have enough time, it's that we waste it.
Interesting.
So those two things combined with the fact that having studied abroad, I was a big fan of tea. I was just drinking a lot of tea. This one day I just looked up and said, that's it. This is the end of this way.
So tell me about I'm curious more about we don't have enough, we have time, we just waste it. That's hard for me to swallow. Because I feel like I utilize a lot of my day, and I'm in meetings, back-to-back meetings. I get home at 8:30, 9 o'clock. I rush dinner because it's already late to begin with. Girlfriend and I have dinner. Then I'm just I have no time to, at that point I'm just tired. And I'm like, okay, I have no time to hit the gym. I have a glass of wine and then I'm really tired. I just want to chill. And it's so what did you change that you felt gave yourself enough ample time to do those things that you weren't doing?
Well, in a sense,
in other words, what can I do?
Yeah, right. Okay, so I'll get a little bit metaphysical in a sense. So I think one of the interesting things actually, let's look at it this way. So we have an empty teacup.
Right.
And we have a full teacup. So the full teacup, I can't put anything else in it. Or it's actually half full, so I can only fill it half. The empty teacup is full of limitless potential. I could put tea leaves in here. I could put my hand in here. I could put tea, anything. So if instead of living life always half full, always kind of slightly static and buzzing and full of to-do lists and emails and everything else, how can instead we live life to get as empty as possible to allow for that limitless potential?
So how do you do that?
Okay, so all right, well let me back it up.
I mean, that all sounds great.
It sounds great.
I want
So-
an empty bowl that I can do anything with.
So I think actually, and I even draw it to the fact that you sit in front of your computer and you sit down to write a document. And first off, this is aspirational. I do the best I can, but I have the same problem as everyone else, right? So you sit in front of the computer and you sit down to write an important email or document or whatever, and it's so difficult. First thing that happens is your cell phone rings, or you get a Facebook update,
Right.
or a tweet, or something
Yeah,
else.
I've come back to so many like emails that are completely done. All it required was me hitting the send button, and for some reason, I'd never hit that send button. Like I got distracted and started doing other things.
So part of it is, even if you're so disciplined, so there's a lot of movements now of all these like productivity softwares out there that allow you to, disable your browser, turn off email, all that. Even after you turn everything off, and even if you unplug the internet connection, your basic screen is full of distraction. So that's the first. So it's just distraction, right? So what I find, and actually I even notice in you already have one of the most hardcore basic skills, I think, and what that is a paper notebook. And I thought about this, like, what is it? Why do you, what is it about paper notebooks that allow for that inspiration? And I think so I have my little notebook here. So on one hand, if your computer screen is like this, or your mind or anything else, there's no room for that idea. So the beauty of a simple paper notebook is that you turn it over, and this is totally limitless.
Yeah, clean canvas.
And that's not possible on a computer. I
Yeah.
mean, there's now some software apps that allow that. But anyway, so I think distraction is the biggest thing out there. And that it's really hard because we're naturally addicted to that.
Yeah.
The other
Tab
side,
browsing was the worst invention of all time. Like sometimes I look up and I'm like, I have 45 tabs open right now.
It's insane,
Like, am
right?
I ever gonna go back and go through? There's no way.
There's no
It's
way.
just-
And
yeah.
all these neuroscience studies point to the fact that we cannot physically multitask, and every time we do, it's metabolically taxing on our system. So we start the day with a full battery, and you open email, make a call, and do something else, and it goes down a little bit.
Yeah.
And it keeps going down until finally, the end of the day, you're stuck with your most important task, and your mind is fried.
Yeah.
Right?
And it reminds me of like, in a way, like the old cell phone batteries that you used to like. Remember, there was like this weird thing where you would almost have to drain them all the way before you charge them again.
That's
because
totally
like
it.
it's like if you do this little tiny mini charges and slice it up, you ruin your battery. You
Well,
know?
then, yeah, exactly. And then it looks like this. And I think the whole. So when you say how, it's like, how do you have a mind like this? And I think it's actually, on one sense, it's totally liberating to do that, to sit down and opening a blank sheet of paper is amazing. But the other side, and the reason I thought about why can't more people do it, and it actually goes back to, think about this empty space as the color white. Or actually, white is not a color, right? It's just emptiness.
Right.
So the color white in Japanese, the actual character for it, is derived from the image of a skull. So when you picture back in the day, you're walking across this landscape and you come across this white skull, bleached by the sun, the wind, the snow. It's kind of shocking and it's kind of frightening. This white skull, this is going to be us. This is kind of a frightening place to be. So this is absolutely empty space embodying death. And that's scary. Scary place to be. All right, that's on one side. The other side of the equation is the color of milk is white. Milk is life.
That's what I'm talking about.
The color of eggs are white, whether you're an alligator or a blue jay or a snake, white eggs. So on one hand, you have inspiration, potential, and everything else that's embodying in life and creativity and entrepreneurialism. The other hand, death. And you ask any writer staring at a white sheet of paper, that's a fear, right? It's like, "Urgh."
Yeah.
So I think that's the challenge to clearing our slate and creating this emptiness, but that's also the opportunity.
Yep.
And the beauty of it is, that's what tea's all about. It's this ritual that helps foster that.
And you were reading about tea during this time.
So
Was it
yeah.
reading about tea or just reading and enjoying tea at that time?
Just enjoying tea. I really didn't know much more. I mean, I
Did
grew
you
up
buy
with-
it bagged or how did you first get started?
I had a friend from Taiwan, so I studied abroad a bit in Japan and in Europe, and I had a friend from Taiwan. I was always interested in it, but this is, at this time, even tea was nowhere near as popular as wine is today. So there was no foodie culture around it. But it just, I was actually drinking an oolong, like this one. It's like a tea Kuan Yin style, medium
awesome.
oxidized, and I was actually drinking one like this in the high-tech world up in Seattle, rainy, drizzly, miserable day, and having this phenomenal experience of emptiness in my head as I'm just sipping this, staring out over fluorescent lit cubicle farms. And I said, wow, this is an amazing experience. Creating this mental space is something that I need. And if I need it, and maybe there's people out there that need it, is maybe there's a business behind it.
Yeah. So you were like, okay, well, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to go into tea. I don't know the first thing about it. I'm just going to do this.
Yeah. It started out, I wanted to do something that made an impact. It wasn't so much that I want to create a tea company, but I felt such value in this quiet space, this emptiness, in this little window that I began to see. And I realized everyone around me was in the matrix, just plugged in and just relentless nonstop and not living life. So I thought, all right, how do I create a company? I have a need. I'm one customer. I'll start with myself. Let's create it for me. Let's design a business that offers this empty space for me and see if there's a market out there. And you know what? I think that'll look like a retail space. You got to get out of the office, out of the home, out of the commute, and into somewhere special that takes you away and creates a little bit of ritual in your life. I mean, it's another thing. I think we're really missing ritual. And so it's not that you have to be religious or have any kind of crazy rigmarole, but this simple little brewing of tea starts to create that space. I think that's one reason that you got into it. I mean, it helps just create this clarity. Even if you go back to the fray and your schedule's booked, 30 seconds of creating this window is the practice. And slowly, I think you can be able to crack that window and create more.
Absolutely.
And life gets better if you create that window.
Yeah.
And so that was really like starting out at a fairly high level. What are my basic needs? Wow, tea happens to solve that. What does a retail business look like? Well, let's open a store and see if there are customers out there. And I used a lot of the tech world's object-oriented analysis. I built use cases to figure, okay, customer comes in. Are they going to order from a menu or a menu board or some other situation?
Right.
What are the situations and how do we lay out all the options and build a system around that?
So I'm curious, when you're sitting there and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to actually do a retail space. You mentioned, you're in the web design space. You'd never done this before. You'd never signed a lease for an office space in any way.
Right.
As an entrepreneur, how do you go from having no idea what you're doing basically to figuring out how to source tea, to figuring out how to actually negotiate, sometimes a multi-year lease, like finding investors, like that's a lot to do.
Yeah, I mean, I guess truly starting with a blank notebook, no joke. I have notebooks full of like sketches and I mind map. That's one of my favorite tools, just to get everything out of my head. I don't know all the answers, so how can I at least come up with the questions? Like if I can start with the questions, I can find the answers. I mean, I don't have the experience, but I can find people perhaps with it. Using the internet, using the research, I mean, I use the Small Business Administration, kind of everything at my disposal. So clearly money is required, but I'm also a firm believer that if you don't start with the idea and the concept, there is no money. I found a lot of people asking me as a first question, where'd you get the money? How'd you get the money? It's like, well, the money follows something that's good. So forget the money, build the basic concept. The concept is create a space where people can go and be healthy, relax, satisfy basic human needs, figure out how much it'll cost, and then figure out who's willing to pay. So I did not have deep pockets. I didn't cash out in any IPOs, and I had to go the traditional usual routes: friends, family, and banks. Ironically, the banks, this was at a time when banks were lending much easier, and as difficult as it was still easier perhaps than it is today, but the basic idea was that the government backs small business loans. Well, this one is the monkey pick Tikonia.
Awesome.
And the idea at the time that was sold to me was that, the government will support you in your business for you to help create jobs. Go for it. Okay, so you put together your business plan, your financials, everything else. You go there and they basically say, we're happy to approve your loan. What you need is a house for collateral, proven business experience, a proven model, and an equal amount of cash that you're asking for. Which is crazy. So you're asking for a couple $100,000 because you don't have it, and the bank asks you to match it.
Right.
It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I get why.
It's a no-go.
But it's no-go. It was all... So what it took was printing out the list of banks that lend to businesses, and there were 72 of them. And it took over the course of a year sending out the business plan and personal tax returns for the past 10 years and everything else to 72 different banks.
So you were still working...
I was working for about half of this time.
Okay.
But basically compiling the business plan, and a lot of it happens in tandem. So brainstorming, okay, what's my menu look like? What's the space look like where I'm going to go? What does the customer want? What are they going to buy? So thinking about that, putting it down on paper, researching in the area, what are comparable businesses that have environments or products I like? Just exploring all the facets of it and just documenting everything. Simultaneously then, as that begins to take shape and crystallize, where's the money going to come from? So looking at retail spaces, they say the rent is 10 grand a month. All right, where am I going to find that? So putting together the financials, going to the banks, and getting on the phone. So it was just nonstop phone calls of entertaining bankers, presenting them to the plan, presenting them the financials, and over the course of a year, every single banker denying and saying, no, you don't have experience, you don't have collateral, you don't have cash. Tea, that's doomed to fail. Retail's doomed to fail. Every single reason doomed to fail. And I didn't really get discouraged because I knew that if I just called every single bank, I did everything I could and I'll go on to the next thing.
Meaning you would leave.
What can I do?
You would not create this business.
Clearly it wasn't meant to be. I will do
Okay.
everything within my power. I have a list of banks. I only have $50,000 from all my friends and family that we're going to put into this. So how am I going to find out? How am I going to get this capital? Well, here's a list. Here's the only option.
Right.
So I went to every bank. Every single bank said no. The last banker, number 72 on the list, I sat down with him. We had tea like this. We actually had this tea, Maiden's Ecstasy. We didn't get to it yet.
It's awesome.
Pu'er.
Yeah.
Pu'er. I brewed it for him. I just steeped the tea. We had some little cups. It was in his office. And he was totally speechless. And he repeated everything that every other banker said. You have no collateral. You have no home.
Right,
you have
right.
no experience. And he approved the loan. And he approved it because he said, this reminds me so much of my college cavorting days in Morocco. I'm fascinated by it, and I just want to see what happens.
Amazing.
And so
Is he still a customer today, or?
I saw him about 2 years ago. His bank has since been bought many times over and
Right.
consolidated. But he was a great guy. He sat right over here at the table. We had tea, and he's like, "I can't believe you made it."
That's amazing. That's awesome.
And so everyone doubted, absolutely. And it's obviously there's challenges every day. But after about 9 years, I think that it's clear people need this ritual to create space and to be healthy. So I'm happy to say that we're still here.
Yeah. So you started that. You kicked it off. You got your first location open.
Yep.
I mean, walk me through how many years in business now?
So just over 9.
Just over 9.
Yep.
So, I'm sure you could spend an entire day going into the ups and downs of 9 years worth of business and opening up multiple locations. And but give me like a handful of like what's for a new entrepreneur looking to start something that's like brick and mortar, an actual physical store. What are some tips that you have? What are some things that you ran into where you're just like, oh man, if I could do it differently, I would, or I would never make this mistake twice?
I guess what I found is that it's easy to get, so there's definitely the details that I can offer, but the high level is it's easy to get wrapped up in, what tea should I buy, or what should my menu be, or what kind of point of sale system, like the what, all the nitty gritty.
Right.
And then it's also then perhaps more effective to focus on systems. Like let's make repeatable systems, and let's have things, like the E-Myth is all about systematizing your business so that it's not relying on you. And that could go into franchising or it could go into product lines, but if you have good systems, you're not being leaned on by the business. But probably my biggest learning was changing from really being focused on the what and the systems, like the what and the how, to being focused on the why. And that I think that was perhaps the biggest turning point in really clarifying the why of this business. And what I mean by that is nobody else can own the why of a business, whether it's tech or retail or cushions or anything. So for us, the why has been to create human connection and this blank space for inspiration. So if everything we do is lined up to do that, we can focus on tea, we could sell t-shirts, we could focus on tea wear, anything else. And it almost doesn't matter. Everything else fits into that, and customers gravitate to the why. And it's would allow us to be very flexible, and it also allows us to create a unique experience that people are willing to pay for. So instead of focusing on having cheap tea that competes with any other chain, we have this higher level vision and mission that first what happens, our staff focuses on that. People would much rather be part of a mission and something exciting than just work at a company and slog tea.
Yeah.
So when the staff gets excited about being part of something bigger than them, the customers get excited.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second, because one of the things I've noticed with your staff, and has to be extremely difficult, is that tea, having spent several years myself studying the stuff, it's like you kind of have to have a passion for it, to understand where these leaves come from, like the artisans that are putting them together, the process that goes into the tea, the type of drying, aging, rolling, whatever it may be. And it seems that you've got your staff like fired up about this and trained to carry this message down to the consumers. Like how do you find these employees and how do you get them excited about, you know, something that you might be really passionate about,
right?
But if you put, you know, an ad out there to get people in the door as new potential staff, they might say, you know, I'm just looking for a job, but I really don't care that much about tea.
Right.
You know, I used to be a waiter. I'm fine with serving tea, but you know, how do you get them passionate about this plant?
Yeah, because passion's contagious, and people would much rather be passionate about getting up in the morning to go to work than not be.
Right.
So it goes back to that why, and if our why is human connection and fulfilling these needs, we focus on that and have people who are excited to deliver that, and it comes down to recruiting, right? So actually, there's a book I read, Endurance, I don't know if you've heard of that, by it's about the story of Shackleton, Ernest Shackleton, and he was an explorer in the early 1900s and raised a bunch of money to go out and explore the Antarctic. And long story short, it totally failed. But what was unique about the story and what I actually copied from that for this business was he put a help wanted ad out that basically said, guaranteed high risk of death, high adventure, low pay. Only acquire within if this applies to you.
And you put out the exact same ad.
So I put
high
out
risk of death.
no high risk of death, but I basically said, low pay, high adventure, pissed off customers, difficult product, hard work. Only inquire within if you're ready for that.
Amazing.
And people were fascinated, and they've heard a little bit about Samovar and didn't believe it, that tea is hard and requires a lot of training and experience and working fast.
That's
but
interesting.
It attracts
you get a
people
completely
who want
different type of person. Yeah, someone that's
they're not in it for the money.
Yeah.
They're up for the challenge and making the world a better place. And how exciting is that? You're really part of this camaraderie. You're part of a movement. And I guess that's what I would say. It's like, how can you create a movement, which is ultimately more rewarding than just creating another product?
So let's say I walk in the door today, it's my interview here, and I sit down. I've never had tea before. I'm kind of fascinated by it. I'm sure this is probably your typical candidate that you get in, right? How do you get them into that, though? What is the process you take to take someone from a tea newbie to someone that can really, sing the praises of your product?
I guess it comes in first with they're just fired up. I mean, it's the interviewing skills we have acquired are really simple. The first thing is, do they smile and have high energy? Because that's the first thing that's required. And if you don't have that, it's going to be hard to embrace all this new information and learn difficult information and be able to work hard and fast. So that's probably the first question that happens without even asking.
Right.
After that, it's really just it's almost irrelevant what the interview is. It's let's put you behind the counter and see what happens. So I'm going to show you how to make these 5 teas, take notes, whatever, memorize this menu, come back tomorrow, and we'll have a test for you. If you can make 10 teas in under 10 minutes, you go on to the next level. So we have definitely a very clear system. It goes back to the sort of object-oriented days where, okay, you pass through these tiers. And
are you training them at the same time about the tea, the makeup of the tea and what it is?
A little bit. We'll give you the menu and say, just memorize it and come back. Like the first training program is you start as a tea maker. Everyone starts out in the heart of the business making these leaves. Because what we're looking at here are all very different. So we'll train you back there how to make the tea. Memorize what you need to know to learn that. And we're tasting along the way. So you know when this Nishi Sencha is overbrewed and when the Earl Grey is underbrewed. You know to be able to taste that. On top of that, you have to know, because it changes every season, if it's a little off and we need to adjust our brewing technique.
It reminds me of like what, if you ever go to like a mixologist that's making a cocktail at a bar, they take a straw, they put the straw into the drink, they pull it out, they suck a little bit of it out, and then they throw the straw away. And then it gives them a little, is this mix on? Did I mess something up?
So is the egg different today?
So the same thing is applied to like your teas.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to be back there. There's no machine that can do this. It's human artists that pick the leaf and human artists that have to be able to brew it.
That's fascinating because like if you go to any other tea shop, that I'm aware of, there is other specialty tea shops that brew their own tea, but most tea shops are like bag, throw it into a thing and add the water and then just forget about it. And sometimes it's been steeping for 5 minutes, sometimes 30 seconds. It depends on who's serving you.
Yeah, that's one of our missions, to make tea approachable, and that people are often intimidated by it. It's like, look, at the end of the day, the ritual is good for you and it's healthy. So how do you get to drink more of it? Don't be freaked out by the leaves and the hot water and the temperature, and we'll take care of that. We'll brew it right for you, and just making it easy. It's making it unintimidating and getting more people into it. It's good for everyone.
And plus they get to try really what true whole leaf tea tastes like, which is most people haven't had.
Absolutely. I mean, people are used to tea bags because it's convenient. And again, it goes back to speed and the whole thing about Seneca. People are focused on speed and convenience, but actually life gets better and more enriched by experiencing this and using this as a training ground for other things.
And so after they're done learning kind of behind the scenes, behind the counter, when do you start teaching them about the actual regions and things like that?
So then we say, okay, look, here's our binder. We have a thick binder. Here's our website. We've done a lot of training videos, have loads of information on there. And we say, just start with that. We'll pay you to be here on the clock researching, or go home and research. Come back and we'll give you a written test. So we'll give you. So that's the next tier where you have to understand the tasting notes, the flavor profile, the aroma, food pairing, the terroir, where it's from, what the processing details are of who made this tea versus this one, and that's essentially another test. And after that, it's back to the practical. So we kind of go back and forth between knowledge in the head and skills in the hands, and just keep it going. And training never stops. We thought it did, and what we realized was that 3 months in, you have someone who totally forgets how to make this tea just because they haven't.
Right.
So we're always encouraging staff just to drink tea, taste it, get the new crop in. Just make this drinking of tea and living it part of your daily existence, and then it's not work. You're just drinking tea and connecting with customers.
That's pretty awesome.
So it's
Do you find that a lot of your employees have converted to like full-time like tea drinkers, and like I'm sure outside of work now they're hooked on this for life?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, we have. I'm sort of not proud to say that we have a lot of tea snobs. It's one of my experiences early on that a lot of people use tea like this sophisticated level of knowledge that holds over your head, and I really wanted to make it approachable. But our tea is really good, and we buy it in the right volume that allows it to be unique but also fresh. So our staff ends up getting spoiled, and they say, "Oh, I went to this other tea houses and it's crap, or it's not fresh, or it's all flavored." And it's like, okay, look, everyone doing tea is good. Ours is special. We like it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Sweet. So, any other pieces of advice that you would offer for entrepreneurs getting started?
Yeah, I think
especially in kind of brick and mortar situations.
Brick and mortar. I mean, I guess location is important, but on the other hand, I would think that listen to nobody is what I would say. People will tell you everything under the sun, and I think you have to be very possessed with your own conviction, and not to be stupid, but to be able to hold on, and at the same time to be open. Many people said that you're not going to serve coffee. That's crazy. No one's going to buy a product from a place that doesn't have coffee.
Right. I'm sure you still get that pressure today. Huh?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. People come in expecting a latte. They look around and ask for a double cappuccino, and we don't have it. So we say, hey, how about this? Try this tea. It's very high in caffeine and high in antioxidants, and probably 7 out of 10 times we convert them to tea. They feel it's more soothing on their stomach, less of a caffeine crash. I mean, all the benefits of tea on top of the little ritual that creates more space.
Right.
But I would say, so other tips, I would say that in the retail world, location is everything, but on the other hand, everyone told us this location where we are today would be horrible. Every business that was in this spot failed. And I said, well, I have no other choice but to do it. And I think by focusing on going back to the why, the movement, drew people from all parts of the Bay Area to come here, and it's not about location. The people side is definitely probably the most challenging, but also the most rewarding.
You mean the managing of people?
The managing of people, the leading, I prefer to talk to my managers as leaders as opposed to managers, because managers to me has an old world mentality of like, I'm gonna manage you and I'm your boss. But we've flipped it around and we said, okay, how can I support you and lead you? If I can hold you up so that you can hold the waiters up, so that the waiters and servers can hold the customers, and we really support the customers from the bottom up, the customers will come back and support the business, and we will create opportunities. So for me, instead of like looking at it from a top-down owner, manager, blah, 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 how do I just run my day-to-day life as supporting all the leaders here? So I like to think about it that way. And I read a great book called Peak by Chip Connolly. That was an influential book, talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and satisfying the higher level of needs, meaning how do you become the best you can be versus how do I just give you a job and trade your job for money, time for money.
Yeah.
That was a great book. Start with Why was another influential book by Simon Sinek. Who else? I'm a big fan of Seth Godin and his whole world. Linchpin is a great book. So, I try to read as much and absorb what's going on out there.
Yeah, I think Tony Shea from Zappos,
his happiness
book is awesome, and he talks about, in his mind, the role of managers is to remove obstacles for the employees. So it's not so much that managing, it's just like they should be helping get all the obstacles out of the way to let the employees just do their jobs.
Right. And how do you
So-
have systems set up that allow for that? So
Yeah.
I think that's in the retail world, the challenge and the opportunity is between leadership and employees. That's the whole team. If you can create a movement, you have a hugely powerful team. And if you're just ruling by command and control, I think you have a lot of automatons who, they're not computer programs. So they're not going to engage with customers and create passionate customers. So instead, it's an opportunity. How do you really create these linchpins that can make or break your business and help you grow? I mean, that's the way I like to think about it, and that's where the opportunities are. And in retail, the exciting thing is that's a really high touch experience. So you can control that and allow for, I think, higher value and higher brand.
Awesome. One last question. You do some videos yourself.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that for 1 second.
Yeah, so for me, one of the exciting things is hanging out with friends like this, having tea, getting inspired, and opening up the blank slate. So I've had the chance to meet some great people and entrepreneurs, creative folks, and just regular customers, and I invite them in, and we shoot a video. It's called Samovar Stories. We just launched our podcast recently. We had Andrew Weil on and a bunch of other awesome folks. You joined me at one point.
Yep.
And we're launching that to really connect customers to and viewers out there to the way of tea as a vehicle for connection. It's not so much about teaching you about tea, there's other places to do that, but it's more along the lines of, I'm with this amazing person and we have this great product, so let's talk about it. Casual, stories.
And you get to their kind of how they live their lives, some of their rituals and things that they do every day, which
like
I
the
think that most
day-to-day.
interviews don't really touch on, which is really cool.
Exactly. We interviewed Craig from Craigslist, Tony Shea from Zappos, like these people who are not that necessarily available to the general public, but that have touched millions of people.
Yeah.
So here's a chance just to hear from them firsthand, like what's the day-to-day look like?
Who was that runner that you interviewed too? I want to see that one.
Dean Karnassus.
Yeah, so tell me about his story real
Oh
quick.
my God, that guy is amazing. So he wakes up at 4 a.m. every day, and I won't burst the whole bubble, but he runs a marathon every single day before work. Ridiculous. So he runs a marathon because he feels that life is meant to be pushed to the extreme, and it's about enduring your best and being the best you can be. Every day,
I got to see that interview because that must have been fascinating.
I was like slack-jawed talking to him, and he's like, yeah, every day I come and I run a marathon, and then I come home and I make oatmeal for the kids, put them off to school, and then I get to work. Well, what do you do for work? Well, I write books. He writes books that are inspirational, and he stands up all day typing because he feels it's more energizing to stand at his keyboard typing and then do push-ups in between. The guy is amazing.
What does he eat for breakfast? Like oatmeal and what else? That's what I want to know is like where he gets his energy from.
Well, he told me on his marathons, he does these crazy things. Like he ran 50 marathons in 50 days,
Yeah, I heard
one in
about
every
that.
state.
Yeah.
And I said, what do you eat? Goo, high protein stuff. He goes, no, I eat. There's some pizza delivery company that actually delivers to a GPS location. So he's running and he calls on his phone, deliver to these coordinates, and they deliver a pizza and he rolls it up like a burrito and runs and eats this
No
thing.
way.
He says, I love it. The grease runs down your arms and you get energized and you go.
What the hell?
What the hell? He's an amazing guy. And so it's people like that, like
That's crazy.
crazy stuff.
So cool. Where can they find those interviews? Because those are awesome.
Yeah, it's on my blog, realritual.com, and on Samovar's website. So it's a place to learn a little bit more about the stories of this business and entrepreneurialism and meet some cool people.
Great. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much.
Yep.